All right, welcome back to another great CMG broadcast. This is Coach Hart here with you. In this video today, we're going to be going over betting odds and what all those numbers mean when you're looking at all the different bets you can place on some of these Gamer Huddle games. And we'll talk today about what the odds are, what the spread means, what over-under means, and then what the money line means. And then we'll talk about what some payouts would look like for some example bets in some of those. Well, let's get to it. All right, so starting off just with the betting odds explained. Now, when it comes to your betting odds, what you're looking at is you're looking at the numbers that are in parentheses here. Now, as you can see, this is a game that's already kicked off. This is the Jets versus Jaguars today. Not going to tell you who we would have bet on in this scenario either way. That's not what this video is about. But we're looking at what these bets mean and what some of these numbers mean in these columns that we've got. Now, the first one we're going to look at is, like I said, the numbers that are in parentheses. Now, we've got minus 110, minus 110, minus 120, and then EV. Now, EV obviously not being a number is going to mean something else. And then if you look all the way to the right, we've got minus 260 and plus 220. Those are our odds. Now, the main thing to understand right here, if the number is negative, like the negative 110 or negative 260, that means that the book is favoring that to happen. Now, obviously, you see two negative 110s, that's two things being favored, but we'll get to that when we get to over and under. And if the number is positive, like that positive 220 that we see there, that means that is an underdog. Now, that's the only positive number we have. We're not talking right now about that plus or minus 7 all the way to the left. The EV in parentheses just means even money, and we'll get to what that means when we look at what some of those example payouts are going to be. Now, the first thing we're going to take a look at is going to be the spread. Now, the spread is those plus and minus numbers with that 7 in the first column that we're looking at. The plus is going to be the underdog. So the plus 7 means the Jaguars are not expected to win this game. They're the underdog. The minus 7 means the Jets are the favorite to win this game. And that plus or minus 7 just means how much they expect them to win or lose by. So when you're betting with these, you're only betting one of these numbers. We're not going to minus 7 and plus 7 to each score here, unless you do two bets. But again, those are two separate bets, so they wouldn't happen at the same time. So if we were to bet on the Jets to win and cover, we would need them to win by more than 7, because as you can see, we're going to subtract 7 points from their score at the end. So if they win 14-10, they do not cover, because if we subtract 7 from their score there, then they would have 7. And that would mean they would end up losing that one to the Jaguars. So the cover is at the end of the game, we'll add or subtract that number that we have to the team's score that we bet on. Now, on that same token, if we bet on the Jaguars to win and the game does end up 14-10 Jets, if we say, should I say, bet the Jaguars to cover, they would cover in that scenario. They don't win the game, but we will win our bet, because if we add that 7 to the 10, they would then have 17-14 and win that game. So when we're looking at spreads, that's how we can tell what those plus and minus numbers mean. Again, not in the parentheses right now, but the spread itself being that plus or minus 7 that we've got here. Now, the second one we're going to talk about is that second column, and that is the over-under. Now, you're going to notice that they're going to be the same for both teams. That doesn't mean we necessarily, if the Jets are on top, it means the Jets have to be over the 32 or the Jaguars have to be under the 32. This is a combination of both teams' scores at the end of the game. So when the game is over, if it is 14-10 Jets and we add those together, that gets us to 24. That is under 32, so we would have to bet the under 32 to happen to win that bet. Now, if the score was 28-10 and that number is over 32 when we add them together, because it would be 38, then we would have to bet the over 32 to win. Remember, in these, you're not picking a specific team's score. We're going to add them together at the end and see if they add up to over or under our specific number. Now, if they add up to exactly that number, well, that's when the casino makes the most of their money, because everybody loses there. And that's where the casino can make it rich. Now, the last one we're going to take a look at before we look at example payouts and how to calculate those is going to be what's called the money line. And that's that last set of numbers. And you'll notice it's only that plus or minus number that we talked about in that first slide with those odds that we have. That's because the money line does not have any plus or minus spread. You're just picking straight out who is going to win that game. Now, the higher the number is, or the larger the number is, again, not looking at positive and negative, now just the number, so the 260 and the 220, that's going to tell you basically how much you're going to win on your bet. Now, if it's a minus and a large number, then that means that team's generally a heavy favorite. You're not going to get a lot of money for betting on them. If it's a plus number that's pretty big, it means they're a pretty heavy underdog. And in this scenario, that plus 220 is a pretty heavy underdog, which means if we bet the Jaguars to straight win the game and we're not going to ask for those 7 points, the casino will pay you more because that's something they just don't expect to happen. Now, taking a look at how we can calculate how much we win, we're going to use those same numbers again, but now we need to convert them to a decimal because that's going to be the easiest way for us to get through this. Now, when that number is positive, so that positive 220, what we're going to do is we're going to take 220 and divide it by 100. That's where you're going to see that 2.2 decimal in parentheses is how we've got that. And if it's negative, we're going to do it in reverse. And what I mean by reverse is so that minus 260, now instead of doing that divided by 100, we're going to take 100 divided by that. So 100 divided by 260 gives us that 0.38 decimal that we've got there. Now, you can do this with any plus or minus. Now, if it's EV, we'll get to that. There's no real math you got to do for that. That's the nice one for us math-challenged people. But when it comes to those negatives and positives, this is how we can get a really good idea of how much we'd win to see if we even want to risk that bet. Now, the examples that we're going to take a look at, we're going to take a look at a $10 bet with 4 different bets that we could make here. Now, the process that I go through right here, you can do regardless of the amount of money you're betting. So if we bet $10 on the Jets to win the money line, and we see that negative 260 or the 0.38, it's going to pay us $3.80 on top of the $10 that we've bet. Because if we win, we're always going to get the money we've bet back plus some more. To find out what that plus more is here in that 380 example, we take 10 times the 0.38, and that tells us how much we're going to win. Now, if we're going to bet on the Jaguars to win the money line, so we aren't going to take the spread, we're going to get plus 220, or again, that 2.2. If we take 10 times 2.2, that's how that's going to pay us $22. So as you can see, there's a huge difference in the amount of money that we would make on this $10 bet, depending on whether we take the favorite or the underdog. Now with the over-under, that at minus 110, if we bet the under to hit, that minus 110 turns to 0.909 because we'll do 100 divided by 110 to get our decimal. Now when we multiply that out, we'll get 909 or 910, depending on how the calculations work out. But 910 would be what we would expect to win on that $10 bet. And then the last one, if we bet on the Jets to cover the minus 7, notice that was that EV one that I talked about. If it is an EV, that means what we're looking at getting is just even money. So whatever we bet is what we're going to get back. So if we bet $10 on them to cover and it's even money, we'll get that $10 back plus 10 more. It's not going to be very common. We'll see even money bets. Generally, what we see with those is when more of the action is going to one side and the casino's trying to give you a little bit of a nudge to bet that even money play so it evens out for them. Now, that is going over spread, over, under, and money line, as well as how you can tell what some of your payouts would be. Now, it's time to get on that gamer huddle and get on to some of those games today.